and we talked for a while. There's just a lot to get to. I mean, there's so much to get to, quite honestly. I have a note here. We don't normally do that here in cloud weather, but there's just so much to talk about, and in such a terrible situation. So, I mean, this is something here as we're looking toward that union. It's so beautiful, and now we've had heartbreak here. And I know I was very saddened to hear the news of last Thursday's deadly Florida State University Student Union shooting. Now, while it's safely in Stark during this terrible event, is a rather different story a little after midnight on Thursday, November 20th, 2014. There's a look there out of my residence hall window there at Cawthon Hall in the middle of the night. After we had a shooting there, you see, it was about being FSU United then, it's about being FSU United now as well. I know I was sitting fairly close to a window at my desk in my room working on a course essay. I was a student there at the time, and I'm a proud Florida State University grad, as I was alluding to. And the residence hall room was on the ground floor in Cawthon there. This is just across from Strozier Library. It was one of the coldest nights in my 4 years at Florida State, where the low temperature got down to a daily record of 23 degrees in town there, out at the airport to be precise, where the official measurements are capped. I mean, you don't get temperatures that cold that time of year, or again, much at all there at Florida State, but especially in November before Thanksgiving to have a hard freeze like that. As you're looking at the situation, I know the heater, it was running very loudly when I heard some noises over that. These seemed out of the ordinary, but I was not overly concerned, at least at that point. Now, moments after, though, on my way to the restroom there, I noticed the residence hall room door was not locked, and as a precaution, I locked it. In the restroom, I heard what sounded more like gunshots there, and lots of them. And then that was followed by calm. And in hindsight, this is probably when the active shooter in 2014 was neutralized. Right after heading back to my desk, alarms started going off to warn of a dangerous situation on campus. Didn't say active shooter officially. I know they changed the system since then, but it's probably already over by the time the alert came out. This is how it works. Unlike severe weather, with a situation like this, you're just trying to get the threat taken care of as quick as possible, no matter what, whether you get the alert out there. I mean, it's all about every second counting there. In these type of situations, the same thing might have happened this time, that it was all taken care of before the alert came out. But it's a scenario there where this is so important. If you are in an active shooter situation, which we hope folks aren't ever in these, but obviously folks, including myself to some degree, I was there back in 2014. And you just when you have these type of scenarios, it's important that you run from the danger if you're in that threat there, and then if you're still you're in a spot where you really can't run, then you hide, and then if it comes to the absolute worst, and this is last chance for survival, worst case scenario, you gotta fight here. We don't want to have to talk about these things, but unfortunately, the situation again is not like severe weather. It's not something you forecast. You kind of just have to know them. Sadly, that's just the way it's been here the last while now. You just got to keep those precautions in mind. As I know, I talked to my roommate about what I thought I heard a few minutes before, and a classmate who worked for a local television station near campus heard the alarms, then posted on Facebook. He was wondering what was going on, and I messaged them about what I thought could have happened. Myself and my roommate then proceeded to call our parents to let them know that we were safe. My beloved late dad, I know, talking about him, William Russell Cloud, passed away last year at the age of 85, and this photo was taken there same day I graduated back in 2016. Ended up being what we used for his obituary. It was such a great photo of him, and his funeral was 1 year ago yesterday on that Tuesday. So, it's just a lot of stuff hitting home in so many different ways as we're looking here. And I know he was still up at this point, and why he did not, or did I know the full gravity of the situation, then it felt important to let him know that I was safe in this type of situation. I know this is especially so as to this day, one Florida State University student sadly remain paralyzed there from their injuries. And it's a scenario here, it's just awful to think about. It's absolutely awful, the lifelong consequences here of actions by folks. It's awful to think about here. They remain paralyzed from the injuries suffered in the 2014 shooting event there at Strozier Library. While I made it back to my room around 10 p.m. from Swanee Room, the campus dining hall, on that terrible night the week before, on late Wednesday night and early Thursday morning, I believe the week before as well, I was at Joe Campbell Stadium in Strozier Library in the night finishing up editing a video report for a course at Florida State University, reporting there, uh, and just using special computer editing software which highlighted veterans organizations like Stark American Legion Post 56 from my dad. He was a past commander of Post 56 there, and also the historian, I believe, at the time. And then just later on in the night, as the news spread, television news coverage started to ramp up. I remember the 3:15 a.m. press conference there where it was announced that classes were still on for the day ahead before reversing course and canceling for that day as things, started to become more clear there. And classes did come back, though, reopened the next day on Friday. I know it was surreal to watch my TV there in my residence hall room, my small television, looking at that and seeing in the middle of the night legendary WCTV anchor Julie Montanero field anchoring live there from the drop off and pickup spot that my parents used so much feet away from me and in front of Cawthon Hall there. It's just crazy to have that. And then as the day went on, many more news outlets arrived on the scene. All the local Jacksonville stations were in town with news for Jax bringing Kent Justice to field anchor just outside my window. First Coast News brought multiple anchors in, and Action News Jax was right outside as well. WALB News 10 came down from Albany too, and with classes canceled that day and deadlines sifted around at extra time, and went to the Love Building to do weather for the FSU weather show that night. And now, why I'm very much, into broadcasting and meteorology, I actually am a fairly shy person and made sure to avoid the reporters, believe it or not, in front of the library. I only wanted to talk weather. On the way home, though, I stopped back from the weather building, and everybody's different. Some folks, just want to talk it out, and some folks, sometimes like me, I may talk with my parents, but otherwise, kind of keep it there, where just you always think about what happened in some ways. But I know on the way home, though, I stopped at Subway in the old Florida State University Student Union. As part of the new one, I know Subway, they tore it down when they built the new union. And I quickly grabbed my dinner and walked very fast back to Cawthon Hall after the fire alarm started to go off and everyone was evacuated. So I know, just crazy situation, but luckily nothing ended up being in progress or anything like that. I believe it was some smoke somewhere, or maybe some type of visual causing that, from what I vaguely remember there. But so nothing was wrong, but still kind of just Roy hyped up, Roy on edge would be the right way to describe it in a situation like that. And it's something there where you thought something else might be happening. Now, later that night, while talking to my parents on the phone and seeing some of the local Jacksonville news anchors still in the distance there, like Santa Ogden, formerly of First Coast News there in Jacksonville, WTLV and WJXX, it's now in Denver. It started to really hit me about what happened around 20 or so hours before, give or take. It may be in just a little bit longer than 20 hours, but somewhere in that range. I know, in a cruel irony, we have some, more news here to get to now, as we kind of look at things here. John Thrasher, the former Florida State president there that led us through that 2014 shooting aftermath here, I know it, some news there. As we look at the aftermath of the shooting there at the library again, he let us do that, and he's been diagnosed with cancer now. It's been announced. So he's battling that, and just terrible to hear that news here. Uh, just so many things coming together in that sad way here. My thoughts and prayers there uh, go out to him and his family during this difficult time. And then as we go ahead, though, again, just the shooting situation, and then that Saturday after, the 22nd, there was hope that things would be closer to normal with a home football game that afternoon, ABC against Boston College. Now, sadly, though, that morning, a Leon County deputy was shot and killed with another injured in North Tallahassee. The game still did go on, but rain came in earlier than forecast and many left early. While I really did not think I would need it, I brought my poncho just in case. Now, I stuck it out to the end as the Noles won in the final seconds on a game-winning field goal to keep their then 26-game winning streak going. And now another cruel irony here. Sadly, we talked about Don Thrasher now being announced on Tuesday battling cancer. Now, in another cruel irony, Mike Patrick, ESPN's play-by-play voice, who called that game on ABC and on ESPN2, instead in parts of the country, it was regionalized there, reverse mirror type scenarios, how it was called back then. Now, I got word on Tuesday that he passed away at age 80. That was back on Sunday. And prior to becoming a national sports broadcasting figure, he worked in the First Coast region there at WTXC Channel 4 in Jacksonville, a late legendary meteorologist and proud Florida State University graduate George Winterling in the early to mid 1970s. Now, before the shooting, I had thought about not going home for Thanksgiving break because I wanted to be in town for the Florida State home football game the following Saturday. I didn't stick around, for that in 2012, my first year there. I wanted to go home with a full break, but this is my one chance to go to a Florida State football game there as a student in Tallahassee. And it was important, though, for me to go with my parents to start after that. I headed home Tuesday, but got back Friday to be there for that game on Saturday there, Saturday, November 29th. Now, I resided in Cawthon Hall my first 3 years there at Florida State University, but partially because of what happened, I decided I wanted to change things up and lived in Traditions Hall my final year there. And knowing the shooting happened late at night in a place that I could mostly avoid going there often, as there are other libraries on campus, and I could also just always study in my room too. Just thinking about that helped, as I only went a few more times there on my last a little over 3 semesters or so on campus. The rest of that fall, then you had spring. I was interning this summer there, and then in the fall back there again in the spring of 2016. I know it's something where that really helped there, but I really feel bad, for just everybody, in this situation. But I feel bad for the current FSU students, faculty, and staff that want to use the student union and the community too there, as it is a really, really nice and new state-of-the-art facility, but it is going to probably be tougher to get past since these were 2 apparent murders in broad daylight in an area that is going to be more, you wanted it to be more about fun and relaxation, but now it's about somberness here. I know a very heavy feeling on campus. As we're looking at things there toward Tallahassee, all the different reports coming in, my thoughts and prayers are with the entire Florida State University community during this very difficult time. I know alumni like myself are trying to be, FSU united with everybody, and then we want everybody to stay Florida State strong. This is very tough, very difficult. You know, my thoughts and prayers are especially with those a part of the extended FSU weather family, as the fairly new EOAS building there is very close to the FSU Student Union. And now, while I do not know any of the current students personally, several shared video with and or appeared on local affiliates and national broadcasts to tell their stories in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Now, you know, following social media some, and then I also still watch parts of the FSU weather show on YouTube from time to time, and I was really glad to see familiar names there and faces safe. And in all the interviews I watched, each one did an exemplary job telling their stories after facing a situation that no one should ever have to deal with. And I am so sorry that this happened again at the great university that FSU truly is. You know, Florida State, one of the best universities in the country here, but sadly, another terrible tragedy occurring 2014 and now 2025. You know, kind of in some ways when I was there, it's not, you know, something that's really rooted in fact, obviously, but you kind of think, well, you went through it once, there won't be another one while you're there. That was true, but you know, it's a situation where you would never really think there'd be one to begin with in some ways, and now a second one at the same school here, and just over a decade apart. Just terrible turmoil here, you know, in the community though too over the last decade or so. I know from these shootings to the deadly 2018 shooting at a yoga studio to COVID-19, and then also to the passings of Bobby Bowden, Mike Martin Sr., and George Winterling. Impacts from Hurricanes Hermine, Irma, Michael, Dahlia, Debbie, Helene, a blast flood emergency last April, tornadoes last May, this year's winter storm, and even FSU quarterback Jordan Travis's gruesome injury in 2023. The Tallahassee and FSU community has been through a lot, obviously, in the last decade or so. My thoughts and prayers, they remain with the family and friends of those who passed away on Thursday. Robert Morales and also Chiru Chaba there, and the innocent victims who were injured in the attack, and the entire Knowles family. It's just, you know, just everybody impacted, keeping you in my thoughts and prayers during this very, very, very difficult time. And additionally, thank you to law enforcement, first responders, and healthcare workers for your response as we try to stay Florida State University strong and Tallahassee strong here. I know you see this reunion again after my father passed away. Went to FSU for some baseball games. Hadn't been to FSU baseball games in a while since I believe before COVID-19. They did good in those. Did good tonight actually against Stetson there. Everybody had you know, the situation there where folks came in to honor the first responders and the like there. But then that union, a place of comfort even for me. I wanted to see it. First time, the new building, and now you're always going to think about this. I mean, this happened in broad daylight. The Strozier Library shooting in 2014, it didn't happen at night. It happened when, even though, I mean, not that night, but weeks before, I'd been out late working on, like, reports as I described here. You know, this conventional wisdom says, well, sometimes bad things, sadly, you know, can happen when it's dark. They're no more likely, but in broad daylight, too, murders, apparent murders in the student union, it's just absolutely awful. Absolutely awful, awful to think about. And it's gonna, you know, be something, you know, months even, you're gonna be thinking about this, sadly. And I just hope everybody, you know, keeping you guys in my thoughts and prayers here. I know as we're looking there. And if you guys need to talk about anything, any FSU students there, anybody impacted, you can message me on the different platforms that I'm on here. And I'll try to get back with you as soon as possible. And then also, FSU has services available as well. I know they have more information on that on their various websites there, social media sites there, and the like. So, just so important to cover this. I know it's not, you know, directly weather related in a lot of ways. or even really weather related at all, but in some ways, most ways. But it's a situation here we got to talk about. It's something that's a really, really big deal that happened in Tallahassee, happened in Leon County there. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, it's just, a somber, somber thing here. As we're looking there toward Florida State University. But we're going to get through this together, folks. We're at Florida State strong. And we're just going to, try to get through this just as very much as we can here. As we're looking at things, of course, I'm in Bradford County. Leon County is where it happened there. As we're looking at things here. And it's just going to be something that is going to take time. I mean, sadly, it's a different, aspect for me, but I know it well, it's impossible to replace a hole in your family, you know, and folks have that because of what happened there last Thursday in the Florida State University Student Union there in Tallahassee. It's just absolutely awful, absolutely sobering as we're looking at that there toward Tallahassee. When I heard the news last Thursday, it just took my breath away, really, hearing that it happened again. It happened again there toward Tallahassee. This is something that is just going to be a bad, lasting memory for the rest of, I know it's the one that happened at FSU when I was there. It'd be a lasting memory for the rest of my life, and then the ones there, folks there this time, lasting memory for the rest of their lives, your lives, depending on who's watching here right now. It's just heartbreaking. As I'm going to come back in front of the wall now again, this terrible, terrible tragedy that did occur toward Florida State University for the Garnet and Gold, is what it's all about here. As we're looking, it's just, trying to be Florida State University strong.